1st, 2015. I never thought I would get this old. But I am here to speak with you about my nomination to the position of active retired Superior Court Justice. Before I begin, I'd like to take a moment to introduce a former law clerk to the Superior Court, Abigail Varga. She is with me here today. She's in the second row. Abby will address you briefly for a few moments, but she is one of the bright, hardworking law clerks that I've been lucky to work with during my judicial career. We, as judges, could not accomplish what we do without the assistance of law clerks. These are new attorneys who come to us just out of law school, and over the time they clerk with us, we teach them everything we know and help shape them into the great attorneys they will eventually become. Now, 21 years ago, I addressed this committee and explained why I felt I was ready to be a judge. I do not remember that day. I could say I do. But I told you I had observed firsthand, I told you that I was ready to be a judge, and I told you I had observed firsthand what it takes to be a judge when I clerked for a federal judge in Massachusetts. I also told you as a practicing lawyer that I learned that the law is a tool that must be used wisely, and that the law, however, has its limitations. Third, I recognized that I was now a role model to the young people in my life who congratulated me, but who also told me in so many words that they understood the achievement, responsibility, and honor in my becoming a judge. These three observations have continued to guide me over my judicial career. I also told this committee that I would be compassionate to people and their life experiences, but I would hold them accountable for the choices they made. I believe I have done this. I want to share with you two cases that exemplify the kind of judge I think I have been over the last 21 years. In one case, I recall struggling with what was a fair and just sentence for a woman who had no prior criminal history, a good work history, and was an overall good citizen. But she had operated a motor vehicle under the influence of alcohol and hit another car, crushing the legs of the driver of the other car. I handled the case at many stages, and at an earlier stage in the proceedings, when I saw the victim, she was still in a lot of pain, she was very angry, and she wanted vengeance. I dreaded the sentencing because I thought the victim still wanted retribution, but I was not sentencing the average defendant. In other words, this particular defendant had no blemishes prior to this experience of driving under the influence. I waited quietly in the courtroom as I observed the victim enter the courtroom. Watching her, I got the impression somehow from her body movement that she was no longer angry and that she had moved into what appeared to be a stage of forgiveness. I confirmed with the victim in open court before I started the proceedings that she was indeed in a different space. With that information, I was able to approach the sentencing from that forgiving place in me instead of the more punitive stance that I often take. This enabled me to both punish the defendant as I'm required to under the law, but just as importantly to encourage her as she moved forward in her life. She would have to serve a minimum mandatory 6-month sentence, but my words to her during that sentencing encouraged her to think about life after jail and what she had to give back to society. I once got advice from a senior judge who was criticized for giving a defendant a sentence of only 1 year. He told me, until you have spent a day in jail, you cannot appreciate what it takes to serve a sentence, whether it's 1 day, 1 year, or 10 years. And for some defendants, 6 months in jail is an eternity. For other defendants, 6 months is a drop in the bucket. For this particular defendant I was sentencing that day, the 6-month mandatory sentence she would have to serve would be an eternity. As I left the courtroom, I saw the victim approach the defendant and give her a hug. I was stunned, but I thought, yes, there are limitations in the law, but I had used my years of experience as a judge wisely in that sentencing to connect the victim and the defendant. Now, I am acutely aware that a defendant and I are bound inseparably by our common humanity that guides me through all of my judicial duties. In a second case, I recall there was a young girl who came into my courtroom with her At some earlier time, I had found her 10-year-old brother had committed a gross sexual assault against his best friend, who was 2 years younger than he. I placed the young boy in DHHS custody for residential treatment. And because he was in DHHS custody, I conducted every 6 months a judicial review to track his progress. His parents and family members were entitled to attend these judicial reviews. It was at one of these 6 months reviews that this young girl, his sister, came into the courtroom and told me she came to court because she wanted me to know that her brother was a good person. It broke my heart to hear her speak. It was as if she was speaking more to convince herself that her brother was a good person. And I told her something that I try to tell every defendant when I'm trying to encourage a defendant toward a better life. I told her, I know your brother is a very good person. There are 360 degrees in each of us, and we are made up of so many parts. We have the good brother or sister side, we have the good or bad student side, the good son or daughter side, and that sometimes someone does something that is bad, but that doesn't make him bad. We are still made up of all the other wonderful sides to us. I thanked her for sharing with me her love and her care for her brother. So I know that my decisions have profoundly affected the lives of others. I've struggled to be fair to everyone who comes before me. In closing, I would like to quote another judge from another state who wrote a book called Doing Justice. And in his book, he said, a judge is to justice like an artist is to beauty. An artist does not paint beauty. An artist paints a picture and hopes to create beauty. A judge does not decide justice. He decides the cases before him and hopes to achieve justice. This is what I have tried to do for every day of the last 21 years, and that is I have decided cases and hoped that I have achieved some justice. Thank you. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. The chair would ask if any members of the committee had questions of the nominee. Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Michael Doyle of Falmouth, and I'm here to speak against the renomination of Judge Wheeler. In my testimony, I'm going to read into the record this time. Judge Wheeler denied a motion to recuse in a freedom of access case after prior misconduct in 2 other freedom of access cases. The first was to record a hearing at the request of the defendant. And not only was I not allowed to record the hearing, this was right after a hearing that she conducted with a Channel 8 news person standing over my shoulder recording that hearing. But the court officers made me delete what had been recorded before the order, and that had very damaging information about attorney's conduct in the courtroom when she wasn't there. The second was to enforce access to the public law library at the Cumberland County Courthouse. Judge Wheeler called the suit brought by me as frivolous. This is a polite way of saying, don't bother me with the facts or the evidence. I've already made up my mind. The law school library consented for the use of their library rather than be sued by me to gain access to that. Then Judge Wheeler allowed me to be badgered by attorney Mark Franco over fraudulent fees. The entire case was based on fraudulent fees from the town of Scarborough to access freedom of access information there. They started out at $3,500 plus. They came down to $570. At some point, I think they're going to be down around $50 when the dust settles. This took place after attorney Franco lied in an affidavit about an oral threat he made against me in the courthouse. I have a recording of that threat. Because of the disregard of the right to access public buildings, the violation of Rule 76H, and allowing an attorney to file a false affidavit without sanctions or a hearing to determine the falsity of the sworn statement, Judge Wheeler should not be approved for another term on the court. I have 2,992 contacts on my cell phone. I can identify 27 of them immediately that have suffered abuse under Judge Wheeler. and have refused to come here because they're still involved in cases. And they're fearful of the outcome if they come here to testify. I talk to a lot of people all the time about courtroom activity. The attorneys here see one side of it. Pro se litigants up against attorneys see a different side. So that's the situation that a lot of people in this state face. Thank you for your time. I take any questions.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Doyle. Any questions from members of the committee for Mr. Doyle at this time? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak against the nomination? Hearing none, is there anyone else who wishes?
Yes. Representative Warren, yes. Representative Sherman. Representative Sherman, absent. Representative Ginsburg. Yes. Representative Ginsburg, yes. Representative Evangelos. Representative Evangelos, absent. Senator Johnson.
Yes.
Senator Johnson, yes. Senator Volk.
Yes.
Senator Volk, yes. Senator Burns.
Yes.
Senator Burns, yes. Representative Hobbins.
Yes.
Representative Hobbins, yes. Representative Monahan.
Yes.
Representative Monahan, yes. Representative Guerin.
Yes.
Representative Guerin, yes. Representative Moonen.
Yes.
Representative Moonen, yes. Representative Herrick.
Yes.
Representative Herrick, yes. Representative McCright.
Yes.
Representative McCright, yes. Representative Mitchell. Representative Mitchell's absent.
Ten members having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative, and 3 members absent. 11 members having voted in the affirmative, and none in the negative, with 2 members absent. It was a vote of the Joint City Committee on Judiciary that the nomination of the Honorable Joyce Wheeler of Portland for appointment as an active retired justice of the Superior Court be confirmed. Congratulations.